Hello and welcome back to Trans Voices in Conversation, the podcast where we give insight into the lives and careers of some of the many talented creatives we at TVC have had the pleasure of working with. My name is Misia Butler. I am an actor, writer and producer with TVC, and I will be your host for the series. So with me today, I have Wallace and Ash Palmisciano. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, both of you. It's a pleasure. So, I'll start off with giving you both some space to introduce yourselves, tell us what you do, and also what your pronouns are, just for the listeners out there.
Okay. So my name is Ash Palmisciano. I use the pronouns he and him. Currently, I'm playing Matty Barton in Emmerdale, who is their first trans character. I sort of started in, I think it was April 2018. Originally, it was supposed to be just for 3 months, but I'm currently still there, so it's coming up to 2 years, just over. So yeah, it's going well, and it's definitely been a flash in the pan, kind of quick lesson in screen and how to get up to scratch really quickly with all of that, and just how fast soap works and line learning. But yeah, I'm absolutely loving it. It's fantastic, and long may it continue.
Great, yeah, fingers crossed. Annie?
And I'm Annie Wallace, pronouns she, her, and I play Sally St in the soap opera on Channel 4 called Hollyoaks. And I've been there now for coming up for 5 years. It's hard to believe.
Wow.
5 years, yeah. Basically, me and Ash were both part of a workshop that was being led by Line Pictures, specifically to find a trans actor, actress to play a role. And it was a bit frustrating, wasn't it, Ash? Because it was like, well, thank you for coming, and it's all been great, but we won't let you know for a year. Yeah. It's like, what? Because they basically had to go and write the character from that point of view. So it was a very wonderful proactive thing that they did when you think about it, is that they put out a big casting net and said, let's see who's out there that is trans talent, as it were, because the one thing, of course, that they couldn't do is look up on Spotlight, and those of us who were still in the closet in many ways, metaphorically speaking, had not wanted to risk our privacy on something that may or may not happen. So for something like this, we were kind of, it had to be done. It was like such an incredible opportunity. Yeah. And then through all the recalls and whatever else, it was lucky enough that I got the job. And of course, disappointed for friends, and of course kept in touch with Ash all the time.
Yeah,
and then, of course, really, really, really happy that Ash got on Emmerdale.
Yay.
So, and I'm still there. Sally is still there. She's on tonight on E4 at 7 p.m. If you
want to nice one.
And I love it. And yes, I'm very happy because for me, soap's always been something I've been really, really keen on since my time that I did stuff at Coronation Street. But we'll maybe talk about that later. So to actually become a soap character was a dream come true from my point of view, and long may it continue, as Ash said.
Yeah, that's amazing. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you both sort of made history as the first trans actors playing trans characters on your respective shows. Is that right?
Yeah, I believe that Matty was the first trans character in Emmerdale, and I'm guessing that Sally was the first trans character in Hollyoaks, right?
No, actually not. She was the third trans character
really?
in Hollyoaks. Yeah, actually, but the first one to be played by a trans actress.
By a trans actress.
I see. Okay.
There were two previous characters. There was a young trans guy called Jason Costello, played by Victoria Atkin at the time for a year, and then a trans woman called Blessing Chambers that was played by Madupi Adiaye. And she was in it again for a year, but both cisgendered actresses playing the parts. So from my point of view, it was the first trans actor.
Yes, yeah.
So, and I would say that Ash and me are the first authentic characters. I'm not doing down what was done before, because to be honest, the characters in Hollyoaks before were pretty well drawn and quite accurately researched. But from our point of view, and I think maybe it's why we've kind of had a bit more longevity, is that we bring an authenticity that really doesn't exist anywhere else.
Yeah.
And we are still the only two trans actors regularly on television.
Yeah.
Rebecca Root, our friend, is in things regularly because she's forging a different path of more diverse roles, and that's fantastic to see. That is that there's not just one actor playing one part, which is important for trans representation. But but of course Coronation Street had Hayley Cropper back in the late 90s, and that was the first really groundbreaking character. But you know something, it was only her for many years.
Yeah, so true. Even now, Annie, I don't know about you, but if people approach me in the street and ask about the character, they will bring up Hayley Cropper and say, "Oh yeah, I remember this storyline in Corrie," and it was a really big thing. Yeah, it's great. It was such a big storyline back then. You know?
It was massive because it wasn't just about Hayley. It was about Hayley and Roy, and the beauty of it was, we were able to put in lots of things that happened to Hayley in the real world that happened to trans people, but we wrapped it all up in this little sweet pill of the love story. And because the love story happened, everyone just wanted things to happen. Everyone just wanted the best for Roy and Hayley, and that was like the dream combination. And even now people say it was one of the best couples ever on Corrie, and it's like,
well, I think this is the thing, is that Hayley Cropper is like one of the most loved ever soap characters across the board. Like, they did a poll.
Yeah.
And the fact is that, you know, I think what happened with that character, and I'd like to think eventually it's kind of happening with Matty, but it's that thing where people actually forgot that she was trans, and it was more about Roy in that relationship and her life and everything else. And if we can do that as trans actors with our characters, then it's been a huge breakthrough, really, I think.
I think
Absolutely.
That's the core of it. And, you know, when you joined, the principal thing about our stories was, we're trans. And then we get that out the way.
Yes.
And everyone has the shock and the horror. And then we get down to just being members of our community.
That's
whether
right.
it be Emmerdale or Hollyoaks or Weatherfield. And that's what happened to Hayley. It's what happened to me and happened to you. And now we're part of the community. And the trans thing, which is really what we want for the real world, the trans thing is the least important thing about our personalities and our characters.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, definitely.
Exactly.
You get that from the longevity, don't you? The kind of the extension of it, as you say, moving past that focus on the trans identity, because a lot of cis people still need that reveal to get past, to sort of learn and lose that ignorance about it, don't they?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
And how do you feel the response in kind of a wider sense has been? Have you felt sort of, you know, included and that it's not been a big sort of uphill struggle, or it's been a little difficult at times?
It's definitely been, from my point of view, challenging at times, because I think the audience of Emmerdale is slightly different to Hollyoaks, demographic-wise, and a lot of people who watch Emmerdale had never heard of a trans person before, so there was kind of like a bit of a shock to the storyline, and I think people were kind of unsure about what being trans was, let alone like who is this new character. And you know, that took a while. Like Annie rightly said, you know, we had to do the trans led storylines first, that this is Matty, he has transitioned, he wants this surgery, and once we'd sort of ticked all those boxes, we were able to sort of like settle him down and do just general sort of life in the village. And once we started doing that with the character, people were really warm to the character. And like, you know, as soon as you put yourself out there, especially under the trans label, you're going to get some backlash because people aren't used to it. However, what was really interesting was the amount of people who were like, look, you know, I've never really heard of this before, but really like your character. So like, it was really interesting, like how much power that had, and also that people just really get used to stuff. Once they see stuff regularly all the time, you start to sort of fade into the background, and they start to, you become part of the family and you become a regular. And I think that's when people are like, it doesn't really matter about his past, you know. And it's been really interesting seeing like people's attitudes change as well. You know, I was quite surprised with how well received the character was. But I'd be lying if I said it hasn't been difficult. I think a lot of actors can go to work, put on their character, go home, hang up their costume, so to speak, for the day, and that's it. They're back to themselves then, and they don't have to worry about it. Whether it's, I'm playing a trans character, and although I'm not Matty, I'm very different to Matty, I'm still transgender, so I still have to bear that kind of responsibility, and often I will have to educate people who ask me questions about the character, and they'll ask questions that they probably wouldn't ask most actors, but because I'm trans as well, they feel like they can. So there's been a few lessons to learn along the way. But Annie, you've been there 5 years now. You've probably had much more of an insight into like how the characters changed and stuff, and what people have been like towards Sally.
Well, the good thing about both of us, I think, Ash, is that they wrote us into existing families, and I think that was pretty good for both of us in terms of getting us in there, rather than just being a lone trans person turning up into the community and dealing with people's suspicions and that kind of thing. With you, it was the Bartons, and with me, it was the McQueens, and I remember when. We had the story conference literally just before I started filming, and the boss said to me, "So, you're John Paul's dad," and I went,
"What?
John Paul McQueen? That's John Paul." It's like, yes. Like, oh, okay. But that was great, because the first year was basically all about how does that happen, that this what happened in the past and how it relates to the present, and obviously meeting John Paul's mum for the first time in 25 years, and everything that came from that was a really fertile ground. And then it led off into Sally and her and Myra, John Paul's mum, having a fling together, kind of rekindling old love, which ultimately was doomed. But that was because Sally wanted something that she really couldn't get, because I'm not going to go into bloody storylines. That's what you do. You just go into. But and that helped, because the audience were able to relate and go, "Oh, that's what happened," and the audience liked to put things together as well. So once we'd done that kind of thing, it was about John Paul and Sally, and then it was about Sally and Myra. Now it's just about Sally, and so she's the headmistress now. That is what she does. But of course, she's got her John Paul back this year, and that's been such a delightful thing, because the one thing I was really missing was the family interaction, because it's one thing being a headmistress where you're literally you're performing a utilitarian role, and I was afraid of actually getting canned at some point, because it would be a case of, well, you're not interesting anymore, you're just our head teacher. But they brought James Sutton back, I'm glad to say, and that's been absolutely lovely, because it's given us the family interaction as well, and it's brought Sally a bit more to light, and that's carrying on. And at the present moment, she's trying to make her son off with this hunky policeman, which is going quite well. But again, the trans part isn't important. It's not talked about. It's not, and the audience don't really care. And I don't know about you, Ash, but certainly from my point of view, the stuff that I've had, as you see, is quite different, because our demographic is like 14 to 30. Really, that's our thing.
Teens.
The school. We've almost absorbed Grange Hill, I think. That's been part of our thing. So it is teens, students, postgrads. Yours is
sort of like 20s.
Yours is a more mature audience, isn't it?
It's interesting. It's right. It was really interesting, Annie, because I think we were at an event together, and we were sat together at a table, and all these like young girls are like really young girls are like coming up to you like, "Hey, oh my god, like, can I get a picture?" And like I'm grateful, but like, you know, I get more the elderly clientele. I'm a huge hit with the older women. But no, that's amazing. Yay. No, but it's right. I think all soap has their audience, don't they? And I know there's a lot of people that like will watch all of them, and I think that's another thing that I was so shocked about, and it's absolutely incredible and it's amazing, is how loyal the audiences are to soap. You know, they really, you know, they are the reason why we do them, and like they religiously watch it every single night, and you know, I think it really is the audience that makes the show, and like they like routine, and they like to see characters develop. Like they'll love to see the relationship with you and John Paul, and I think that's similar with me. There was talks about maybe bringing a trans character in that no one knew who it was, and it was going to be in the background for a while, sort of this mysterious character that's popped up. But then they decided to go a different route, which I'm pleased about. And yeah, I think when you're joined to a family, people want to see that. that play out.
Yeah.
You know, they want to see what the relationships
exactly.
are like.
And also, it's not a taboo anymore in these particular shows. And
No.
I think, to be honest, I think Corrie would have had another trans person in if it wasn't for the fact that Hayley has become, ironically, so iconic. It's like, I think any
So
trans
popular.
character that comes into Corrie is instantly going to be compared to Hayley and judged on that.
Yeah.
And who would want to be judged on the performance of Julie Hesbenthal, who is just one of the best actors, one of the best actors in the country, for God's sake. So I would not wish that on anyone.
You can't
Much as I'd like to go into Corrie, but maybe in the future when I'm older or something. But I would
never know.
That. I would not wish that upon any new actor going into something like that, purely because of that reason, because of the history.
Yeah.
We've kind of. It's
a hard act to follow.
And, you know, we can't not talk about Riley in EastEnders, frankly, because...
of course,
Because Riley and I started around about the same time. I was technically on screen before him because he just had a kind of cameo appearance, and then he came in a couple of months later to do the proper storyline. But essentially, we were in that at the same time, and part of that trans... what do they call it? The turning point, that kind of thing that happened in 2015. And he came in, he had his reveal storyline, and they absolutely did nothing with him. They made him a chef in Ian's restaurant and doing almost nothing. Yeah. And I don't think he would have a problem with me saying that he was disappointed that after 12 months he was let go because the incoming producer didn't know what to do with him. And that's quite an indictment that they couldn't find a storyline for a unique character on one of the most popular soaps in the country, and bearing in mind that the rest of us have seemed to manage all right. So again, that's something that's a bit of a sore point. I think that I think they could have done a lot better, and hopefully they will in the future. Producers change, writers change, all that kind of thing. It's important also to realise, without me waffling on too much, that when people think of a soap, it's the title and the sets and the actors. But the production crews change on such a regular basis. We have a big there's core writers and everything, but there's a lot of new writers that come and they do a little stint on it. And the storylining process is extremely democratic, although it's guided by the executive producer. It's a democratic thing, so it's not like one person's vision. And I think that's a really important thing to stress. And therefore, hopefully, with the new writers and new ideas, then EastEnders can hopefully have a trans character again that hopefully can be as successful as Ash and myself have been.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. I think you're right. I think it's going to happen because, soap's supposed to mirror society. And, it'd be strange if they didn't cover that. So I think that could be something that could develop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, that quite nicely leads me on to my next question for you both, which is talking about your roles as consultants within the writing process for various trans storylines. I mean, are those discussions quite regular in the sense that do they always take the same sort of shape, or is it sort of different per project, do you find?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I first came in, they were very understanding in the sense they were like, look, if you have anything authentic that you think that needs to be added here, please let us know. We had like a little character kind of workshop, and I got to meet some of the regular writers and sort of talk to them about what I think would be good, what I think we should do, what I think we should focus on. They were also really great at giving me leeway of, like, say there's a line that isn't sort of using the right language, or it doesn't quite say what it's supposed to say. Like, I was very open to change that, and they were great. I could call up and say, no, I don't really think that is a good thing to say, or I don't think that's the correct thing to say. And I also got help from other groups as well, because it was so, I really wanted to make sure this character, with seeing what happened with Riley's character, wanted to make sure that this character went down well, and we got it right. So they were really great, and they were like, look, our writers, they don't know what it's like to be trans. So if you've got anything, please say. So we're really open, especially when we do trans-led storylines. Like we did a chest surgery storyline, and what they sent me was pretty good. They'd done some fantastic research. It was really good. There were just some insights that no one really would have known unless they've gone through this surgery. So being a trans person myself, I was able to go, well, that's kind of right, but what would make it really authentic is if you did this and is if you said that. And so they were like, great, and they welcomed all of that because, you know, they want to get it right at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But obviously when it's storylines involving sort of, you know, just things that aren't sort of trans, are kind of like let the writers take reign, and you add your own character to it, of course, and you might have a suggestion like all actors do to stuff. But yeah, they've been pretty open with it. But recently we haven't really done any trans-led storylines. It's mostly been village life and things like that. So I've kind of got into a bit of a rhythm now with the writers and stuff. So it's good, yeah.
Yeah, it's very similar with me, Ash. I mean, what they did originally with Hollyoaks was, like I say, they did these auditions and the recalls and stuff like that, and they basically decided they wanted to create the head teacher of the school. And actually they originally were consulting Juno Roche, who is now a very successful author, and she was the original person because she used to be a teacher as well in a secondary school. So she was originally the go-to for the initial research. And then when I started, they said to me, look, since you're playing the role, would you mind if we consult you for various things? And I went, well, I've got a little bit of experience with that. and it was like, okay. And to be honest, it wasn't, originally I said to them, I think I said, isn't this a bit nepotistic? Giving research my own character. And I said, look, just come to me when it's something that technical or something situational that you want advice on, but I'd rather not advise you on stories. I'd rather you come up with something, and if there's some problem, then I'm happy to chip in. So I didn't want them to think that I was looking over their shoulder, because without going
there's that balance, isn't there?
Because that's kind of what happened with Hayley with Coronation Street, which I was invited to consult on basically 4 months into the character's appearance on the screen, from the Amsterdam scenes onwards.
Of course.
And that continued for a couple of years, and that was fairly full on. I was consulted about situations, about the law, about the legal situations, about social situations, and about certain storylines, and I had a big input into the wedding and stuff like that. So that was a fairly full on situation, and I was keen not to repeat that because I was playing the character, and it would have been a bit kind of weird. And also, I didn't think they needed to go that direction, because although Hayley Cropper's first year and a bit was essentially, it was almost all trans storylines, which, to be perfectly honest, for 1998-99 was an important thing to do, because literally trans people were completely invisible and had no legal rights whatsoever, and it was a really important thing to be able to establish that in the minds of the not we's, that this is the problems that trans people face every day of their lives. And to do that was an ongoing thing, tempered by the love story. Always, everything that happened to Hayley was tempered by Roy's reaction to it or Roy's support of it. So you always brought it into the human thing rather than it becoming a selfish trans issue, like a lot of people think that trans people are selfish. It was about the couple.
True.
And that was keen for that not to happen. So now, I mean, to be perfectly honest, I don't know about you, Ash, but it's been at least 2.5, 3 years since they ever consulted me on anything now. Because we now have a situation where they know me personally, they know Sally very well. Yeah. And also, if there's anything that comes up in the script, which, it occasionally does, the phraseology might be slightly different. Yeah. I might just go, guys, can I just flag up to scripts about this? And they'll go, oh, no problem. Yeah, put in. That's great. Yeah. But it doesn't. It's a diminishing thing. It doesn't happen very often now. There was one little example, if I can just quote, when Myra and Sally were splitting up, which was hugely emotional stuff. God, days crying. You know what that's like, Ash. We had this crazy situation of nobody really wanted to put into words why Sally and Myra weren't working, because they both loved each other. They both wanted to be together, but there was something in Myra that was stopping her from totally accepting Sally in a certain way. And it's because Myra is a heterosexual woman, and she was marrying, I think, and basically what we decided to do was, and I actually hope you don't mind, writers, if you hear this, I actually suggested a line about this, and I said, no, we need to make it explicit. And we crossed off the line that was there.
Yeah.
And I said, you don't want to be marrying me. You want to be marrying that lad that you fell in love with 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But that's not who's standing in front of you right here, right now. This woman who loves you. And it was just like, we had the crew crying. It was a lovely moment, because sometimes it needs
That's
that.
brilliant. Yeah, it's so true to life.
That kind of cutting through the confusion and saying, no, this is what it boils down to. And I think for trans people, it can be a lot more cut and dried, because it's quite a basic thing. I think that people who aren't trans overcomplicate everything, and that's not everyone, of course. I don't want to generalize too much, but I think mostly there's a thought that things are more complicated than they really are.
That's right. And also the thing is as well, the medium of soap it's so fast paced in terms of storyline changing. You know, we work in like sort of 2-week blocks with our storylines and everything, and obviously some storylines will go on for longer, but sometimes we have to keep things very simple with how we do stuff, just to tell the story. Otherwise, you know, so sometimes I can't really go into as much detail as I'd probably like to personally on that matter, but you know, that's how we've got to show it, and that's what we've got to work with. So and it's I think you know, if there was any major sort of things that they were doing wrong, that they're more than happy for you to help out, sort of thing. You know,
that's great.
You know, if you start being a diva and requesting, you know, to change every line, and maybe you know, your own sort of private trailer and things, I think they'd start to question you a bit. But they've been open to
they want it to work as much as we do, and they don't want the flack of oh no, that's wrong, you know, coming from the audience. And to be honest, give Corrie their credit. When Hayley was in it for those initial few months, they got a lot of stuff wrong, because it was being the story was coming from a very simplistic point of view. But you know, between myself and Julie and a couple of the writers who were really determined to get it right, I was brought in to help that. And suddenly it was, I was so proud of everything that they did. I came from a certain point of criticism into just being, you're getting everything right now, and everything is beautiful, and even the stuff that I wasn't consulting on, they were getting right. And so this is where we are. And I was when I was watching your initial stuff, Ash, with the mum and everything, and then the surgeon, the surgery operation,
Moira,
and everything. That was just, it was so good to see that being done in such an authentic fashion, and TV companies, they're due. They've moved away from the sensationalism that is still, unfortunately, extremely prevalent in the printed and online media. And actually, TV, British TV, is leading the world. It is, and you know, American, obviously, but in terms of, I think, factual content and stuff as well.
I think I'm kind of hoping that, I mean, America certainly have more trans characters, I think, on TV, right? But I'm hoping that the British kind of TV, they are getting it right. Like they did the fantastic drama with Anna Friel. Don't know if you watched that. Was it called Mermaids or Butterfly? But Mermaids works really closely with them. And that was lovely. But yeah, you're right. In terms of like getting it tastefully right, they're doing a really good job. Just be nice to see more trans actors out there and parts being written.
I think America, yes, has more trans characters, but I think they have more trans characters who are really, really trans. And by that I mean, like hello.
Yeah, they don't
it's not
just
people who live in a village and you know, run a school or it's.
They make it their most interesting fact as opposed to the most least interesting fact about themselves. They make that the purpose of their character.
Like, this is the trans character. And then Pause was very popular. There was a lot of trans characters in that. But it's not a very identifiable scene to most kind of British trans people. It was about the voguing culture in the US, hugely popular, largely through. I'm not gonna say what I was going to say there. Basically, it was more of a show about glamour and about but connected with poverty and connected with a time when trans people were absolutely being stamped upon. So we're talking about the late 70s, early 80s, that kind of thing. And it doesn't really, it's not what people are doing now. And there's not a lot of that on American television. It's quite, as you say, Ash, it's quite sensationalistic and entertaining, certainly. And seeing trans actors actually being employed is a good thing, in my view. It is good.
It's great.
But I think what
definitely.
we're doing is, I think that British television has always been known for its gritty realism and its kitchen sink and all that kind of thing. And certainly with regards to Corrie, the main soaps, I think the trans characters are being treated with respect and at least listened to and made to feel a part of people's communities.
Part of the community that they're living in, and on an equal level to everyone else. So it's really lovely.
Yeah, that is lovely. And you've talked a lot about different kind of storylines that aren't necessarily involved in the trans identity aspect. Do you both have like one specific storyline or aspect of your character that you really, really enjoyed doing? Annie, you were talking about kind of that specific scene with the relationship. But was that the best one for you, or is there other stuff that you preferred doing?
There's been so many highlights to it. The stuff with John Paul has been now. If I tear up here, it's because I'm a ridiculously emotional person, and I have big emotional memory. So when I was starting that whole process, and it was working with James to create this parent-child dynamic, it was very emotional because James was fantastic, and he knows how to press my buttons. When we do the reverse and the camera's on me and it's over his shoulder, he overplays it to the point that it makes me absolutely wow. Yeah. He's really, really good at going to make you cry here. But then I stand there and I look at James and I just, with my emotional memory, I just go, this is your son. And as a single person with no children, that's a real emotional thing, because I will never have what Sally has. She has her John Paul. So the scenes where John Paul and Sally is just being a proud parent are the best for me, because it literally the chemistry between the two of us, and we even look similar. It's really weird, actually. It's a really strange thing in profile.
Actually. Great casting.
You know what?
It really works. I love that. Yeah.
You do, actually. That's great.
So that's the bit I love.
Yeah, I would say sort of like similar, really. Like the relationship that I have with my mum in the show, Moira, is quite an explosive relationship. So it's really lovely, and we always have those deep emotional scenes because they've just got a really good friendship. But what's really nice is that Matty actually looks after her. Really, he's like the more sensible and more sort of rounded level person, and she's before Christmas got into split up with Kane, her partner, and went on a downward spiral of drinking and really bad mental health, and just having like the trans character being the most stable one and the most sort of like relatable and like looking after the mum was just really lovely to play. And also I love my character hates my stepdad, Kane Dingle, so there's always some really nice juicy scenes between us two, with me telling him what for, sort of thing, when I think he's messed my mum around. So yeah, there's just all sorts of things. Even like the most normal kind of like comedy scenes are good to play. Like I do a lot of comedy stuff with some characters where we're just being silly and starting off with own businesses and just, like entertaining people, and it's just stuff like that that's just sometimes really fun to play, especially if you've had like a 2-week block of where you've had to be really emotional and crying every day and angry. You go home and you can't help but feel a bit rubbish, so it's nice to sometimes do the light-hearted stuff as well. So I do enjoy work, because I work in the pub as well, which is great. So I do enjoy having a few days in there. So that's good.
Yeah.
You get to work with lots of different characters that you don't usually work with in your family. So that's quite nice.
Yeah, and similarly with the
definitely.
school, I have a regular throughput of school kids to deal with. Naughty school kids, of course. They're always the naughty ones that get brought up to
Yeah,
the
of course.
headmistress's,
Always naughty.
office. But yeah, I like it when I get the comedy stuff. Because so much of it, as I said before, is being a head teacher and saying the lines I find so difficult, which is talking about procedure and exams and all this kind of stuff, and you have to get it right.
Of course.
But at the moment, we've got this little storyline that's going on where Sally is matchmaking her son with this gorgeous police officer who joined us a few months ago, and so that's what's currently going on. Obviously, we're lagging behind because of the slowdown on the schedule.
Yeah.
So it should have been on like a month or so ago. But here we are. It's happening now.
That's
and it's
right.
lovely because it's just funny that Sally is just being silly. And she just sits there and she asks the most inappropriate questions. And it's like, so how long were you with your last partner? I mean, how is she or he? I mean, and it's just... she's so candid about it, but it's funny. It's just funny, and I love the comedy part. And then of course we
and everyone loves a bit of romance as well. Everyone loves a bit of romance.
Oh
on
yeah,
screen.
absolutely.
They love
and
it.
yeah, Sally's had her romance, initially. Well, she's had 2 romances. Initially, she was. I know. She was initially quite in love with a younger teacher at the school called Nita, which was a completely hopeless exercise because she was in love with a straight girl. But it's one of these hopeless
Never gonna
situations,
happen.
and it was nice to play that out because Sally knew how hopeless it was and all this kind of thing, and then that led to the Myra proper relationship, which was very real and to be perfectly honest, may still have been going on if Nicole hadn't decided to call it a day on Hollyoaks. She decided to go off and do other stuff. But from my point of view, I was like, listen, whatever happens, I'm fine. It was more important to me that Nicole, my friend, forged her way, which she is doing on this big tour. And we'll just wait and see what happens with Sally. She's been in. She's had comedy stuff, she's had serious stuff, and then her school got blown up, so she was covered in mess, crawling through rocks and things like that.
Oh
so
no!
We kind of
love
mixed it up,
it.
and then of course 2 years in a row. Can you believe this? This is the jammiest thing in the world. 2 years in a row, got to film abroad. So, like 2017, we spent a week in Ibiza. 2018, we spent a week in Mallorca. Filming outdoors, staying in a beautiful hotel and everything, and it's like, oh my god! And I'm the only one who got to do it twice, so they'll never send.
I was going to say
they'll never send me abroad again.
You did well
there.
there.
So I think I've been quite lucky.
Sounds like a great range of different storylines and experiences that you've been exposed to. It's great.
Sorry.
I wanted to sort of.
I was just going to say,
sorry,
and
what
again,
you were going to say?
None of it had anything to do with the T word. It was being part of a family, part of this, and Sally was just being Sally, and she's a bit eccentric and a bit odd, and I love, that she doesn't fit the mold. She plows her own furrow, as it were.
Yeah. But I love that because she is very much her own character, and the bits that I've seen, I sometimes drop in and just see how you're getting on, and like she's very much her own character, and like, to be honest, like, you don't. Yeah, there's so much to do with her that the tea thing doesn't even come into it. It's not even a thing. So
but
that's,
if I can
that's
just say
great.
one thing though, there is a part of me that is hoping that at some point, at least one of the soaps will actually address what's going on in the real world, because I don't think there's a single trans person that is not being affected by the stuff that's going on in the media and the stuff that's going on in Parliament and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually affecting all of us in one way or another, and I think the soaps don't want to get involved with that discussion. And I feel that I'm not saying it's Hollyoaks' job or Emmerdale's job. It would be nice for one of the soaps to pick up on the fact that trans people have had a perfectly happy, normal life for decades, and now their existences and their rights are even being questioned. And I think closing closing the door to
Yeah.
that discussion in television isn't necessarily a good idea, and it would be nice to see that, even though it would be a trans storyline. But I think it would be important to reflect it and say, look how ridiculous this is.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. You know, I think that's the one thing that I think about is that, you know, I think that really there is a lot to do with that. But I think you're right. I don't think they're prepared to go there at this point, but maybe in the future they will, you know.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
I think
There's always
we'll
that
see.
kind of
Yeah.
balance of having, you know, trans storylines because they are trans characters and they do experience trans, you know, effects of being trans in the wider world that's not necessarily always accepting, which is, you know, a difficult thing, but it's something that should be exposed in a
definitely
decent amount. Yeah,
and I think it'd be cool,
so,
to see more trans writers as well out in the mix, you know, because then we might get a bit more of that kind of stuff happening. But you know, this is all good. This is all for the future. So let's hope that we see that more.
Fingers crossed. So I wanted to finish off the podcast with something that Harry really wanted me to finish it off with, which is a quiz on soaps.
Here we go.
Here we go.
On, Annie.
Unfortunately, some of these questions have already been answered in your answers. We weren't sure how much you knew. But we'll just go ahead with them anyway. So I've basically arranged 3 questions for you each.
Three questions each. Okay.
3 questions each. There's no competition here. Well, you know, whoever gets the most answers, there is a competition.
Come on, Annie. Soap champion today. Representing Emmerdale. Here we go.
Oaks.
I can't even. Do you know what's the
Ash.
worst? Do you know what's the worst thing about it is? I can't even cheat because you're on my phone. I can't even use my phone. No wonder you spent so long setting your computer up, Annie. Hey?
Look, you can see my hands. You can see my hands.
Here we go.
We'll be watching you carefully. Yeah.
Okay,
all right, Ash, you're up first.
I'm up first? Oh, God, no pressure.
Yeah.
Go on then. Okay, here we
I
go.
guarantee you, I think these questions will be really easy.
I don't
number
know.
1. In Emmerdale, what is Chaz short for in Chaz Dingle?
Chastity. Chastity. I can't even say it. It's chastity.
Chastity, yes. Ding, ding,
Dingle.
ding. Number 1.
Thank you.
Yay! Okay, so this second question has been talked about a lot in our conversations, which is, who was the first trans character in a British soap in the UK?
Is that to me?
Yes.
So the first trans character, I believe, was Hayley Cropper.
Yes.
That we've been talking about today. Am I right?
We've been talking about
Obviously,
a lot.
Not a trans actor, but the first
Not a
trans
trans
character.
actor, but first trans character.
Hayley Cropper. Yeah. Love
Yes. 2 out of 3. Okay.
Oh, this is getting
number
good.
3.
This is getting good. Number 3. It's all on number 3 now.
So number 3 is specifically designed by Harrison, our artistic director, which
Amazing.
is, what is the name of your character's best friend, Ash, in Emmerdale, who you almost had a thing with, and Harrison was very upset that it never happened?
Yes, we didn't get together. Her name, the character's name, is Victoria Sugden.
Yes.
But she was married to my brother, so
She was married to your brother, yes.
There.
Too complicated there.
It was too complicated.
I
there was
want
too
to
much going on.
Victoria.
So does that mean I
Too
got
much
3 out of
going
3?
Yes, 3 out of 3.
Yay! Okay, cool.
All right,
I should have.
Annie,
You know what?
your turn.
Okay, go on, Annie. Go on. You got to get 3.
Okay, number 1. Stepsisters Mandy and Cindy have both been married to which Hollyoaks character?
Tony?
This is a slightly tougher question. Yes. Do you remember
Tony's
his surname?
married everyone. Tony marries everyone.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
good
To be
shout.
fair.
Yeah.
An
married a
easier
lot.
question in that sense. Yeah. Okay. 1 out of 3. Number 2. You've also mentioned this character. What is the surname of the first trans character in Hollyoaks?
Costello. That was
Yes.
Jason Costello.
Yeah.
I should mention that I haven't mentioned yet. All of these questions do start with the letters T, V, or C after our company.
Hey!
That might make it easier.
Clever.
2 out of 3. Last
Very
question. Who played Mark Fowler in EastEnders, the first character in a soap to be diagnosed with HIV?
No.
Oh,
there were
no,
two.
hang on.
There were
He was on
two.
Dance. It was on Dancing on Ice.
There
There were
was
two.
the original Mark.
Oh, yeah.
Was in
Can
for
you-
a couple of years and then went away, and he was played by
Right.
Mark Scarborough.
Right, okay.
And then, but the one that everyone really remembers the most would be
Yes.
Tucker Jenkins
Right, yeah.
himself from Grange Hill, Todd Carty.
Yeah.
Todd Carty, nice. All right, well, we're here. We both have 3. There's no
You know
winner.
what, though? I feel like I'm going to be a gent and like Annie actually gave 2 answers there. I would not have known that.
This
I
is
would
just
not
because I'm
have
a
Extra
known
soap
point.
head. I'm a
Yeah.
ridiculous soap head. I mean, like I said before,
I was
it's
just-
a dream job to be in a soap when you're a soap head.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
It was. It just reminded me of when Todd Carty was on Dancing on Ice. Did you see that? Where he just like literally
I know.
skated off the
Funny.
screen. Oh, it's brilliant.
Funny.
Brilliant.
I know.
What a legend. What a legend.
He actually he actually came to the
Wow,
Hollyoaks
I mean-
studios, believe it or not, because
Yeah.
I'm not going to bore you, but because Phil Redmond owned Mersey Television, and they used to film Grange Hill, the BBC in London and everything, but the cost and everything went up, so they moved Grange Hill to the Chilled Wall Studios, and they filmed it. So Hollyoaks High that you see was originally Grange Hill, and there was
Oh, no way.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so fact for you there.
and there was a scene where I think it was the very last episode of Grange Hill, which was shot outside the school that is now Hollyoaks High, and Tucker Jenkins turns up in his motorbike to see his little cousin, and it's like, oh, that's cool. Tucker Jenkins has been here.
That's great. And I love all the insights,
Such a
little
geek.
insights you have
Such a
into
geek.
all the different soaps. It's amazing.
Annie, I've got one quick.
Oh, go on, mate.
Question for you. If you could play any other soap character in history, if you could play them, who would it be?
Oh God, that's ridiculous. Oh God, any other soap
Good
character
question.
in history? Good heavens. You see, that's ridiculous because for a soap person,
You could go right back. You could.
do you know what? Hilda Ogden.
Go on.
Hilda Ogden.
Is
on,
that?
Coronation Street? Yes. She was the cleaner. She was the cleaner in the
Corrie,
Rovers.
yeah, classic.
And she spoke with a very strange
Nice
voice like
one,
that all
mate.
the time. She was always up here like that, and she sang in a funny way like that.
Yeah. You've got the part, mate.
and she
You've
had
got the
always
part.
had her
That's
three,
it.
three rollers in her hair with the little hairnet on. Oh, but you know something. Great
classic.
character. She had her pathos,
Go on.
but most of the time she was just this comic character, and I think Jean Alexander played her, and just literally soap legend. Yeah, loved her.
Yeah,
Legend.
Or Hayley Cropper.
that's amazing. Oh, Hayley Cropper.
Yeah,
That's
or
true.
Hayley.
But then, yeah. All right. Well, thank you both so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure to listen to your stories and all your insights into the industry, especially soaps, and all your knowledge of soaps and your amazing quiz answers. So thank you so much, and I'll
you.
leave you there.
Thank you so much for having us.
And we got
Thank you.
Goodbye.
the tech going.
See ya.
Lovely to see you, and take
Yeah,
care.
yeah,
Best
yeah,
of luck for TVC and everything. And
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you.